I'm Erin Pearson, the host of Decisions Now, a podcast brought to you by Evalueserve about how to leverage data and AI to improve business decisions. Today, we are joined by Vijay Chand, who is the head of transformation at Alexion, the rare disease company within AstraZeneca. He has over 6 years of experience leading global commercial reporting and data strategy. Vijay has overseen data governance across 60 plus countries and led platform modernization initiatives serving over 2,000 users from analysts to C-suite executives. As a board member of the ePHEMRA, European Pharmaceutical Market Research Association, and chair of their Data and Systems Industry Committee, he brings a lot of really unique insights into how pharmaceutical companies are evolving into data-driven organizations. So Vijay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Erin. Great to be here.
Yeah. So today we're going to be exploring how pharmaceutical companies are evolving into these data-driven organizations and leveraging AI to transform everything from drug development to patient care. So we're going to be discussing how traditional data approaches are being revolutionized and what this really means for the future of healthcare innovation. So just to start and set a little bit of context, what is your perspective on why every company today is essentially a data company? And how is this shift manifested specifically in pharmaceutical development?
Yeah, so today, every company is considered a data company because data has become a critical asset that plays a foundation role in achieving business success in today's digital economy. So because you have both the digital economy that you need to play in, and plus with all the technological advancements, what that has enabled the company to do essentially is apply that technology to collect vast amounts of data in terms around their internal processes, as well as how they engage with their customers, how they market their products. And so that's been basically transformational for companies in general, because now every single company has sort of a duty of care to manage the data that they're generating. So that applies holistically across the board, and also during, for example, for the business I'm in terms of the pharmaceutical life science industry, it also applies at all stages of the drug development process. But in general, the shift to a data-driven company is going to give you sort of three key shifts in the way in which you run your business. So one is going to be around decision making. So now that you have all of this information, you're going to apply some data analytics to look at that information and make informed decisions to either reduce risk, increase profitability, try to find new opportunities for your business. You're definitely going to look at the data to drive some efficiency and optimization across your business, from how you manufacture your product to the FTEs that you have within your business working day to day, as well as other operations. So really trying to streamline and reduce costs and provide value to your shareholders by that improved productivity. And the third area is going to be around customer experience. So trying to take that information that you're getting around your customer and not trying to drive a one-size-fits-all strategy. So you're going to really look for, how can I personalize and better service my customer so that I can get them the information that's relevant through them, and you're going to glean that sort of insights through the data analytics that you run on collecting data for your customer. Now, when it comes to pharmaceutical drug development, there's 5 or 6 areas in which sort of having a data-driven approach is really going to be beneficial. And when you layer some of the latest advances in technology and AI on top of that, you can really transform sort of how you develop a drug and bring it to market. So the first step is always around drug discovery and development. So maybe 20 or 30 years ago, this would have been looking at different compounds, trying to see what works, what doesn't work. And there's still an element of that. But now during the drug development phase, with sort of the bioinformatics and chemical informatic information that's available, you're able to run that analysis a lot faster to see what are the potential viable drugs that you'd want to start to develop and take through those early stages of development, all the way through. And then once you start your development journey, at some point you're going to run into clinical trials and have to take those compounds through the trial process. And that design and management of trials and having precise patient selection is where that sort of data information really starts to manifest in terms of having faster and more efficient trials running so you can get to your endpoint quicker. But it doesn't end there. When you get to the regulatory process around compliance, the data helps ensure compliance with regulatory requirements by maintaining comprehensive records, providing detailed insights into every step of the drug development. And then even once you get through that regulatory process and you launch, there's that whole post-market surveillance where you can leverage sort of secondary data assets such as real-world evidence data to help monitor drug performance post-launch, make sure it's safe, make sure it has efficacy. And then if you layer on top of that AI and machine learning to really sort of drive optimization and efficiency at scale, you can imagine like each of those steps become infinitely faster. I mean, there's still some time that you need to invest in each stage of the process, but you're able to move through a lot faster than you were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And you're also able to do that with multiple projects at once.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who aren't in the pharma space, they don't necessarily realize that the drug development life cycle can take easily 10 years to go through. So the fact that we can do all of this a lot faster, we can get intelligence, and then we can also, what I liked what you were describing is it was really the life cycle of drug development. It's not just starting and getting it to market, but it's also monitoring it once it's on the market and then making refinements to go back to what you were saying in the first part, which is then to improve the overall customer experience, which then lends its hand to your very first point, which is improving decision making and value as a whole for a company as well. So all of these things really work together. And there's also this cultural shift within companies on being able to do this effectively as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for companies who are just beginning their data transformation journey, what are the essential first steps that you would recommend? And what are some of the common pitfalls that you've seen that they should be avoiding?
So there's a couple of areas in which when a company's starting this sort of data transformation journey, I think the key part of that phrase is the middle word, transformational, right? So you have to have the mindset that change takes time. It takes buy-in. It takes iteration. It takes proving concepts through pilot projects. And so you got to go through that step by step to build yourself up for success and your transformation up for success, and have a long-term strategy in place. So it's not like you can just start a data transformation project and you're done in 2 months and that's going to be the end of it. There is a lot of iteration involved, especially in life science industry. A lot of companies are generating vast amounts of their own data. So transforming that whole data ecosystem is going to take time and effort. And it all starts with a clear vision and strategy. So you got to have a defined set of goals in terms of what data you're trying to transform, align it to your business objectives, and understand how that data is going to add value to that business. So you're not going to just necessarily transform data for the sake of transforming it. It's got to have some tangible benefit to the business. And that's where you then take it to your leadership team and say, I've got an idea on what we can transform. This is how it's going to benefit the business. And then you need to get buy-in from sort of your senior leadership in terms of the approach, as well as sort of budgets that may be needed to get your project off the ground. You also need to work cross-functionally. So rather than working in a silo and building something on your own, you have to get buy-in from different areas of the business, from the folks that are going to be end users to IT, to insights, to analytics, to different teams, as well as bringing external collaborators in who may be able to accelerate your transformation journey as well. So it's not just like you sitting in a silo and trying to do it on your own. There may be third-party companies out there that do this day in and day out for different companies, so they're able to come in and sort of plug and play and really accelerate some elements of your transformation journey. And then you also need sort of a strategy around what your data collection, what your storage is going to be, how that information is going to be analyzed, and have a governance policy in place so you're managing that data effectively and you're able to ensure that there's quality, there's privacy, you're complying with regulations, and there's a mechanism for change management because data doesn't just stay static. It's constantly evolving, and there's potential changes that you may want to apply to that data. The other thing to also bear in mind is it's not just about the data. There's also a sort of technical element around sort of the infrastructure and technology that's going to house that data as well. So you got to find the right technology that's going to be a right fit for your organization and your sort of IT strategy in terms of how they're evolving that infrastructure. So it's not something that's offshoot. It aligns to the overall strategy of the company in terms of, sort of what type of vendors they're using for cloud services, etc. One area that's not always thought of and is an afterthought is around talent and skill set. So having having your leadership buy-in, having a good governance model, aligning to your company's infrastructure and sort of technical approach is all well and good. But in terms of driving that transformation drive, you need really strong talent that may not necessarily be skill sets that you currently have within your team or within your company. So you may need to bring out outside help to support that development journey. So, talents like data analysis, data engineering, data science, some of these are maybe relatively new fields to some companies who have had a sort of a more traditional approach to their data management. And so, there requires some additional skills that need to come in to help support that transformation journey. And the final thing, which I always think is the most important, is you've got to prove you got to run a proof of concept. So you got to start off really small, show that it can work, get buy-in from stakeholders, get people excited about that transformation journey, and then iterate from there. So you're gradually building your scalability over time, and you're not trying to have a really big transformation project that's going to affect your entire company and that's going to take years to bring to life. People don't even stay in roles for multiple years these days. So trying to get that buy-in is near on impossible. So you start off small, build excitement, build a capability, and you'll find in a cross collaborative approach, you're going to bring other people on board that are going to be part of that journey too.
Yeah, the word I think that you used in the beginning that I really liked was you have to iterate. And essentially, as you were describing this, it goes back to, a lot of people are setting SMART goals for everything, but you have to set these same goals for these transformation projects as well. You can't just start with a, 5 to 10 year vision on what we're going to execute. You have to break it down into small steps and make sure that you're on the right track. And inevitably things are going to change over time as well. Technology is going to be changing over the time, so you might adapt to that. Your business goals and your strategy might be changing as well, so you just have to constantly iterate what you're doing in order to transform in the way that you want to, and that stays up to date. And I think, to your point, bringing in other partners as well helps you also scale up and down in the skills that you need, and also in the advisory that somebody needs at different phases of the project when they have experience in different areas.
Now, Erin, there are some pitfalls with running a transformation journey. So let's touch on them briefly as well. So the first one I thought of was a lack of clear objectives. So you have to define what your scope is, what the purpose is of your project. So it ensures that you don't have misaligned efforts and wasted resources going during the life cycle of your transformation journey. Ignoring data quality is also a big one. So making sure that the data that you're bringing in and transforming, you're actually assigning budget and resource to clean and validate the data. So you're not just taking the data as is. You're looking at what is the information supposed to be telling you? How can I validate that is true and it's not just giving me some random numbers? And then if it is giving you some random numbers, then you have to have a step where you clean the data and then validate it, and then it passes some QA checks. You need to have that rigor to ensure that the data quality is there. Probably something that can be underestimated is change management. So change does take time, and this is where that sort of PLC and iteration really comes into play, because not only do you start off small and build up over time, you also take your end users on that journey as well. So you start engaging with your end users at the PLC to get them used to the idea of this is what's happening, this is what's changing, this is what the outcome is going to be, this is going to be a benefit to you. Help us validate the data, help us build out the technology, or review the technology to make sure it's fit for purpose and that you're going to use it. And then you just add bits and pieces onto it over time. And if you try to just do a complete transformation and switch one thing off and a new thing on, it seldom works that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are often reluctant to change. And then the other two, one will be around data security and just ensuring that you have that governance model in place and you're sort of managing any rules around privacy and such. And then so what the biggest pitfall I often see is that there's an overinvestment in technology and an underinvestment in cleaning up the data and making sure that the data is validated. So they try to go with full bells and whistles on like, here's the best cloud solution, and it's going to plug into this super fancy dashboard, and it's going to have a Gen AI tool, but the data is coming through isn't that great. So you need to invest in that whole data management paradigm to make sure that actually the whole purpose of that cloud and that dashboard is to expose this information so people can make business decisions. So that data is going to be like rock solid, right?
For sure. It doesn't matter how pretty the dashboards are. If the data's wrong, it's not going to help you at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So you've seen both traditional and modern data management approaches. What makes the traditional methods unsustainable in today's pharma landscape in particular?
Well, I mean, to answer that question, we should probably touch upon what some of those traditional data management approaches are. And I think we go through some examples, hopefully become apparent to the audience quite quickly is that why it's a traditional approach and not a modern approach. So one of the traditional approaches that you'll have is like a centralized database. So the data is stored in a centralized, often on-premise database. It's a relationship database with structured query language, which is commonly used to interrogate the data. There's some manual data entry and processing required, which is going to be time consuming. It's going to be error prone, and it's going to require significant human intervention. So you're going to need to have a large team to support that process. The other thing is that with a traditional approach, you very often have siloed data systems. So you may have 20 or 30 different data systems all looking at different types of information, all having some sort of manual data entry and processing, and none of those systems talk to each other. None of those data sets talk to each other. So you end up having departments that are essentially duplicating the work for different types of information. And that can lead to inconsistencies in sort of the information that you get when you're asking it from one versus the other. And it can get quite problematic if you need to ask a question that's going to talk across several of those data sets. The other one, which I think a lot of companies are still in the process of resolving, is the data refresh cycle. So you'll have these periodic batch refreshes. So that may be like a daily cadence, maybe a weekly cadence, maybe a monthly cadence, but it's always at a scheduled interval. And it can, for some data assets, delay real-time analysis and decision making, right? So, for example, if you're looking at your internal sales information, if that feed can be supplied to you daily, could you get that refresh daily if you needed to? So now, if you're sitting at the corporate HQ and looking at strategy, you may not need to see daily sales. But if you're on the ground working within the marketing company, that may be something that you need to see to change your strategy if something's not working. And then you'll have some limited scalability around how much volume you can handle in these centralized databases, and you'll have costly hardware costs as well, right? Because you're typically talking having like servers on site, etc. And that's the back end. And then you also come to the front end where you're sort of reporting and analytics are talking to individual pieces of information in these centralized databases. So the types of information that you're going to get, you're not going to get that connected insights and analytics experience. It's going to be very rudimentary because you'll just be looking at one piece of information in separate dashboards or data sets. So that's like some of the sort of traditional data management approaches, right? Which is really it may have worked 10 or 20 years ago when data volumes were significantly less, but in this sort of digital age, those traditional practices are really going to slow you down and make things cumbersome. So in terms of if you were to compare that to modern data management approaches, how you store that information has changed quite dramatically. So you've gone from this sort of on-site server approach to cloud-based solutions, where data is stored externally and you're able to read it, kind of like stream it like Netflix, rather than having to have on-site databases. You're able to automate data capture and processing a lot faster and handle a lot more volume. You're able to integrate data systems. So if you do it right and you have good data governance and data management processes in place, you're able to integrate different types of data information together. So rather than having siloed data systems, you can have an integrated data system in place. And then depending on sort of your resource and budget, and use case, you may also be able to sort of change that batch processing so you're getting real-time data processing, so you're able to see live information rather than information that may be a couple of weeks, couple of months old. Scalability and flexibility come into play if you're layering all of these things, allowing for sort of dynamic scaling of data infrastructure. So as you have spikes in volume, with maybe new product launches, etc., it's much easier for you to expand those cloud-based solutions. Or if you're coming to the end of the life cycle of a product and you need to bring it down a little bit, that's the up and down scalability is a lot easier. And then you're able to plug in sort of the latest advances in technology in terms of advanced analytics and machine learning to really sort of connect the dots between those different data assets and get those killer insights that you need to support your sort of data-driven business decisions. Now, all of that requires some expertise, right? So when you're in your transformation journey, taking that modern data management approach does require some outside help. Now, you can do that in a couple of ways. One is sort of hiring sort of resources with that right skill set. But in the initial phases, getting sort of third parties that are already sort of building their own capability around some of these solutions to come in and help consult and guide you, even if you're building someone internally, it's really going to accelerate your journey. And it's always those beginning stages where you need to do some blue sky thinking, plan your approach, strategize, and then you'll need some resources to really start the spike in that journey through that development cycle.
Yeah. So I just want to drill into that a bit more. So can you walk us through some examples of how data is transforming these different stages of drug development, from investigating different compounds to human trials? We've talked about modernizing infrastructure and data use, and then how is AI also coming into the mix here as well?
There's transformations that are occurring all across the different stages of development from a drug, from discovery all the way to post-launch. And each of those individual steps is accelerated quite significantly, and AI does play a significant role in that acceleration. Now, the life science industry, to a certain degree, is quite conservative in approach, because if you look at the industry that we're dealing with, we're sort of treating people's health, right? So there's always sort of an element of conservatism that comes in any decision making. But even though for some industries, AI may be a new phenomenon, for sort of life science industries, especially those that are involved in drug development, it's already embedded to help support that development stage. So at the beginning of your drug discovery, there's going to be target identification, right? So you're looking at specific targets that you potentially want to take through the screening process to see if a compound is going to be viable or not. And AI can really help accelerate their journey. So it can analyze complex biological data to identify potential drug targets, speeding up those initial stages of drug development. And you can use AI for virtual screening of chemical libraries to rapidly identify promising compounds for further investigation. So what you would have had to do in a lab-based setting maybe 10, 20 years ago, you can now use AI to complement that lab-based setting to really accelerate that initial phase. Say, that looks promising. Let's look further into that specific target, that compound. And there are, depending on the company size and the budget, there are going to be different AI tools that you can use. Atomwise is one where you can use AI for molecular discovery and virtual screening. And then for compound identification, in silico medicine offers AI tools for target identification and drug discovery. So, depending on the company, they may be using these tools or other tools. And just try to find some generic examples that we can use to describe each of these steps in terms of the types of tools that are available. And then so you found a target, you've gone through the screening process, and you're a bit further along in your development, and now you get to the drug design stage. And this is where you can use generative models to generate novel chemical structures with desired properties, optimizing the design of potential drug candidates. And then you can take it through a QSAR modeling process where you're using quantitative structure activity relationship models to predict the biological activity of the compounds, aiding in the design process. So really, this is where, at the stage of development where your design of your potential drug is starting to take shape, and you're using AI to really optimize that process. And then there are tools like Benevolent AI, where you can utilize machine learning to design and optimize novel compounds. And then OpenAI is the other one example I was looking at, where it provides software for computational drug design and molecular modeling. So you found your drug, you designed your drug, and now you're ready for clinical trials. So where can AI transform that process? So one area is going to be around patient recruitment, where you can use AI to help identify and match suitable patients for clinical trials. And this will help you reduce recruitment times and also improve trial efficiency. And then the other area is around predictive analytics, where you can use AI to forecast the trial outcomes and monitor patient responses, enhancing trial design and decision making during the process. So you're really using AI to find the right patients for the trial, and then using predictive analytics to say, okay, based on these patients that we've recruited, what do we think is going to happen? And then adjusting for that in real time as you're going through that trial process. And Clinarian can be used for real-time patient data analytics to enhance patient recruitment. And SAMA offers AI-driven analytics for clinical trial optimization and prediction. So we've found the drug, we've designed the drug, and we've taken it through trials. After that trial phase, there's also precision medicine where you can use AI to really sort of optimize your approach, where you can use genomic analysis supported with AI to process and interpret large-scale genomics data to develop personalized treatment plans based on individual genetic profiles. And this genomics analysis and this personalized sort of treatment pathways, they're still really in the early infancy of happening, right? So some companies are a little bit more advanced in what they're doing behind the scenes, or how they're starting to engage with patients. But give it 5, 10, 15 years, and you're really going to be able to get personalized treatment based on your body, your genetics, rather than a drug that's like a one-size-fit all. And then the other area is around sort of biomarker discoveries, using AIs to identify biomarkers that predict responses to treatment, facilitating targeted treatment. So again, this is that same sort of individualized, personalized treatment pathway, where you're looking at specific biomarkers to say, well, actually, that potentially could work on you versus another patient that may have a different biomarker, and they may need a slightly different sort of treatment pathway. So, but you can start to do those types of analytics now, and there's different AI tools like deep genomics or foundation medicine where you can run those types of analytics today. I don't think that the medicine or the manufacturing capability has quite caught up to have 5,000 different SKUs to cater for individual treatment pathways, but maybe we'll get there one day. And then you can also use this approach to look at drug repurposing. So you can use AI to analyze vast data sets to find new therapeutic uses for existing drugs, potentially bringing treatments to markets faster at lower cost. So you may have a drug that treats disease A, but you can run it through the cycle a lot faster using AI. So actually, it has a potential candidacy to also treat indication B or indication C, and you can get it to market faster, have a lower cost, and ultimately that's going to benefit patients that are sort of suffering from those conditions. An example that comes to mind there will be IBM Watson for drug discovery, which is providing AI tools to analyze scientific literature and data for identifying new uses of existing drugs.
I think one of the cool things within here as well that you're alluding to is there's a lot of new advancements as well with agentic AI. So especially when you were talking about these personalized recommendations, or if we're looking at like synthetic data, we can also do a lot more to predict how drugs are going to react, whether it's into more personalized medicines, or if they're more regional markets that we're looking at as well. But we can do a lot more to preemptively predict what's going to be happening and how we should approach different things, and if there are different compounds that we need to use based on where the drug is going to be sold. Um, and it just overall helps improve the overall efficiency as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so one of the other areas is NLP, so natural language processing, because one of the applications where you can use NLP is to extract valuable insights from scientific literature, patient documents, clinical records, and it just helps the researchers keep as informed as possible on the latest developments around the disease area that they're looking at or treating, the drug they're trying to bring through to market. So it just gives you that sort of best-in-class information that you would have potentially had to manually read through to find. You can really use AI to accelerate that journey a lot faster. And then general process optimization around manufacturing of your drug, supply chain management. AI can really be leveraged there to make more of your drug in a quicker time, and then manage how that's supplied out to end patients.
So that's a great overview of how we're looking at AI at different stages, market optimization, and how data is transforming throughout all these different stages of the pharmaceutical development. So now looking ahead, how do you see the interaction or the intersection of data management and AI evolving in the pharmaceutical development, and how should companies prepare for this?
Yeah, you have to look at long-term view in terms of your sort of investment strategy, but just the speed of the change that you're getting with AI and how fast it's advancing, something a roadmap that would have been maybe 5 or 10 years, you're having to look at 1 or 3 years, right? So in terms of preparing for that future, your timelines are more now significantly more condensed if you really want to make the best out of these latest technological developments. So you got to come up with a plan, right? So if you're in terms of preparation for your future, is looking at your infrastructure to start off with, see do you have that scalability and flexibility within your current setup that will handle growing volumes of data and complexity of data, and ensuring that you've got sort of the best-in-class security measures in place to protect any sensitive data or any regulatory requirements around data protection. The other area that companies really should be looking at now in terms of preparing for the future is around talent development. So that's internal talent development in terms of your current resource pool, looking at the evolution of your departments and the types of roles that will come in the next couple of years, but also finding suitable external partners that are able to accelerate your journey and going through that vetting process to find out capabilities of different companies. Some organizations may like big similar sized companies to come in and help support them. Some may like boutique organizations, and sometimes it's just a personal relationship, right? Depending on how your company operates and what feels best for you, you really do need to focus on that internal and external talent, the talent development. So you're able to bring in the right people at the right time to help support you in the future. And then because of the sort of multi uses that you can get out of the latest AI technology developments, there's a slight change management that you need to deploy to your organization, where you need to kind of break down some of those silos and foster collaboration between data scientists, medical researchers, regulatory experts, in the case of life sciences, for example, marketing teams, so that those insights that are gleaned from your data are able to be shared across those different functional areas without the need for duplicative effort to exactly the same piece of activity to get those insights in the first place. And then you need to adapt to some of the regulatory changes that are evolving around data privacy, around AI in healthcare, And so you need to be able to move and implement compliance frameworks to adhere to these regulatory requirements as and when it's required. And then you do really need to have strong data governance processes in place. So building data products, having data schemas in place, having the metadata in place, having data dictionaries in place, having a change management process in place, having ethical AI usage in place, right? So like not everyone is just running their responses through ChatGPT in emails, for example, at a very basic level, right? And then having that sort of agile mindset as well, because if the pace of change is moving a lot more rapidly than has previously happened, and that journey is just accelerating faster and faster, you need to have an agile mindset in your organization to be able to quickly adapt to those emerging technologies and also the market shifts, right? It's not just your organization that's going through that change with that technology. Every organization is, so that competitive landscape may start moving a lot faster than you previously may have been used to. So that's some of the areas where you need to prepare for. But what does the future look like? So what are you preparing for? So one of the critical areas is around an integrated data ecosystem where you have more diverse data sets, clinical, genomic, real world evidence, cell, secondary data, all being harmonized into a data set that can be, or data sets that can be used to drive your business by just asking a question that can feed across all of those data assets rather than having a specific question on real world, a specific question in clinical, you may still have those business cases as well, but if you want to look across that whole ecosystem and be able to query and get an answer based on all those inputs, that's going to be possible in the future. And AI is going to be able to facilitate that seamless data integration and extraction of insights from complex multi-source data sets. What you're also preparing for is with AI, you're going to get to the stage where there's going to be a lot more advanced personalization. Personalized medicine will become more precise, driven by AI's ability to analyze patient-specific data, which we touched upon previously. And so it's going to enable companies to design more highly targeted therapies and treatment plans, which will hopefully support improving patient outcomes. So, but that whole personalization that the industry will potentially shift to over time. And this is, of course, going to be increased automation across, from manufacturing all the way to analytics, where some of those routine processes in research, data manufacturing, data management will become a lot more highly automated as AI machines come into play. And then you're also preparing for real-time decision making, where you're able to look at more real-time information and change sort of your strategy according to market dynamics and what you're seeing in your data a lot faster than you are today. And then probably one of the most interesting areas is around predictive and preventive healthcare, where you're shifting from a reactive approach to a preventive healthcare model through predictive analytics. So this is where you're really starting to leverage some of the computation power of AIs to analyze patterns to predict disease outbreaks, patient deterioration, which will help facilitate proactive intervention.
Yeah, I think those are all great areas. I think what you said, how can people prepare, the change management and agile mindset in particular are going to be critical going forward, because there are a lot of changes. And to what you said, the pace of change is happening faster than it ever has before as well. So not only are we seeing changes now, but we're going to continue to see them, and they're going to be coming at us at a much faster pace. Medicine as we know it is going to be changing as well to more personalized care, as you were mentioning. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the companies are adapting, but how patients see all of this going forward also.
Yeah, and there's one area that we haven't touched upon, which is really going to be interesting to see how it develops, is how sort of doctors are able to handle that personalized treatment pathway. I mean, we've seen in a lot of countries, healthcare systems are completely overwhelmed with the volume of patients that are coming through. And that's like a one size fits all, right? Treating patients it's not so individualized and customized per se in terms of their treatment pathway. But if you're having to have a different treatment pathway for every single patient that you see, it's gonna require either more doctors, more time, but some sort of change to take place to handle that change in approach, right?
Yeah. Well, it'll be very interesting to see how it all plays out. But Vijay, thanks so much for joining today and sharing all these really cool insights. I think things are changing rapidly, and it's a place to really pay attention to, as it does impact all of us as well. But thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thanks a lot, Erin.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Decisions Now. Check out all episodes at evalueserve.com/podcast, and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes.